there guys, TC Made with TC Gaming. Wanted to bring you another video for the ACF 2.0 series. And what I wanted to talk about in this one is the situation where you have a character that you want to bring into an ACF project and you don't have a compatible skeleton with the Unreal Engine mannequin, Epic mannequin skeleton, and you need to either retarget things from ACF onto that character, or you need to build a character animation blueprint from scratch, or maybe you want to do that anyway if you're starting with a brand new project and you want to build your character. So I'm going to do the first one. The first part's going to be about bringing in something and basically retargeting ACF stuff onto an incompatible skeleton. So that's the first part of that, what we're going to do here. Alright, so one of the first things we want to do if we're going to do that is to get a character in here that doesn't have a compatible skeleton. And this is also a good opportunity to talk about what I talked about the other night, where if you have something you're trying to add to a project and it's not compatible, or even like version wise, you'll see this here. So if I go into ACF and I filter down for just my ACF projects, you'll notice that all these are like 425, 426. I don't have my 427 project available here, so I have to hit show all projects. Then 427 sample will show up. But you see down here it says asset not compatible with version 427. Please select closest alternative. If you go to 426, then it'll let you add that package, which is this EIN Fantasy Barbarian. It'll let you add that to the project even though it's a different version. Okay, so we're going to let that load and I'll be right back. Okay, once everything gets done loading, you're going to have a folder for your character that's been migrated in. And if I open this up, we see our character in here. And we'll go and we'll pull up the mesh folder. And if I pull up the skeleton for male barbarian 001, that's his skeleton. What we should see here is he's got a completely different naming convention. And you know, a lot of the things on here are completely different than what we would have for a regular character in ACF or an Unreal Epic mannequin skeleton. So what we would do is go into the Retarget Manager and make sure that he's set up for a humanoid rig. And here we have all these are already mapped in this particular asset. If they're not, then what you have to do is you have to say, okay, well the pelvis on my humanoid rig corresponds to, in this case, BIP01-pelvis. And you go in through each one of these and you go and pick whatever bone it is that translates over to that particular character. Okay. Now, after you have that done, you want to make sure that both of your characters are in a similar pose. And if I look at this guy here, he's kind of in an A pose, but not sure how it's going to work out. So what we'll do first, let's go near show, under the character, we'll go to bones and look at all hierarchy. We can kind of see how he's tilted a little bit better here. This might be close enough to the mannequin A pose. So let's go ahead and leave that on there. Actually, it looks like his shoulders are going to be a little weird too. And what we'll do is we'll just save this for now. And we'll go over here to the full player BP. We'll locate our mesh here and locate the skeleton that's associated with this. Oops, I didn't want to open that up, but it's okay that I did. Inside of here, we're just going to go to the skeleton. That'll take us over to where we can get into the Retarget Manager for this particular character. And he's also set up with his humanoid rig already. And he's also in that A pose. Most of the bones look like they're going to be similar enough. And if not, we'll tweak them a little. So then what we want to do is, you can get there from being inside of here. We can go to the animation blueprint. So this for us will be, if it pops up, should be in the background there. This is our ACF full Anim BP. And we're going to take that ACF full Anim BP. I was trying to just locate it without going to it. An easy way to get there would have been if I was in this full player BP and just go up here to the mesh again and then just hit the magnifying glass for this full BP. It should take us out to the full Anim BP. If both characters are in a similar pose, then what we can do is we can just, as long as we're sharing the rig and the pose, we can go in here and we can right click on our ACF full Anim BP and hit retarget Anim blueprints, duplicate Anim blueprints and retarget. And then we can pick the male barbarian skeleton. And you can see right here, it's going to probably be a little weird, but let's just do it and see what we get. I'm going to change the directory, and normally what I do whenever I do a retarget is I go into the character I'm retargeting stuff for, and I right click in here and I'll just put a new folder, and I'll call this RT Anims, which for me just always means retargeted animations. And I'll say OK for that folder, and then I'm just going to hit retarget and we'll just see what happens. Give it a second to do that and I'll be right back. Okay, after that process completes, we'll see that we have a bunch of animations in our RT Anims folder, and we're going to want to go in here and say save all, save selected, and let that process through that. And I apologize in advance. This is going to be kind of a long video because there's a lot of steps involved in this when you don't use typical mannequins. I recommend if you get an opportunity to use a regular mannequin and you don't need to have something specifically animated on the character that's not on an epic rig, or an epic skeleton rather. You know, like if your character has like a really long tail with bones on it and you need to animate that, then obviously you're going to have to do this type of process and animate on or retarget onto that character as opposed to just putting it on a different rig. But some of these things are going to look a little strange because he's got this little sword, or this little axe rather, that lays around with him, or flies around with him. Sorry, I'm getting a little tired. What we're going to do when we bring him into a blueprint, we'll just hide that bone by name and get rid of all that section of the animation. There's a couple of other things you could do too. You could go in and take the materials off of those. But for now, just to give you the excuse me, the high level overview of the process, we'll just go ahead and hide it when we use it in the blueprint. So after I've gotten everything over here, I'm not sure exactly what all has come over with this, so what I like to do is flip on these filters. You go to filters, animation, and we'll put in the aim offset 1D, the animation blueprint, animation composite, blend space. We want animation montage and sequence, blend space 1D, and that's probably about all we need right now. And then what you can do is you can shut these off or on to kind of toggle and see what's in here. So if we go aim offset 1D, we got that one. And then I could compare that to what's in my full sample. So if I go to full sample, see there's only one AO block over there, and there's also one AO block inside of my RT Anims. I can shut this off, go to animation blueprint. There's ACF full anim BP. If I click under full sample, I've got one for the character, one for the horse, but the one that I want for the character is here. And go back over here, toggle this off, go to animation composite. There's nothing here, nothing in the full sample either. Go to blend space. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 blend spaces. I've got 7 there, but one of them's a horse. Okay. And then you can take these off and go to animation montage. And we can look, there's the ones in the full sample versus the ones in the RT Anims. So there's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16 of those. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 19 of these. So what are we missing? Let's go to, actually looks like quite a few of them. So there's Bless, looks like Bless, Crouch, Land Roll. So it looks like we're probably just missing the ACF Executed and Executor. Those are the two that I don't see in there. The other ones look like they are there. So if we need these for what we're doing, we'll come back in here and we'll just grab these two. Or if you wanted to, if you notice that they're missing, you could just go right click here and say retarget anim asset and just grab that one thing. Grab your character, change your directory, go back over here and go to your RT Anims folder and hit OK and retarget. And then go back and do it again. Go back to your full sample for your, what was it on, animation montages, and we do the same thing again. So right click this one and say retarget anim assets and duplicate, pick the barbarian skeleton, change the directory, and go down here to RT Anims and retarget. And basically all we're doing is we're just making sure that everything that the ACF sample needed has also been retargeted onto our character, so that when we make our swap, we can stick this character on our animation blueprint, add the sockets that we need to for the weapons and all that kind of stuff, and then the character should work when we get done with this process. It's basically why we're going through all this trouble. And again, as I said, it's way better if you already have a character that just is rigged to the Epic Skeleton, but that's not always going to be the case, so we need to know how to do this. When we go back in here, and I think it looks like we now have them all. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, it looks like it tells me right here. I'm sitting there counting them. It's 18 and 19 there. So still not sure which one thing would be missing. Let's see here. In a second, I'll just locate them without holding you guys up. Okay, so the missing Anima Montage is this fire rifle iron sights. So same thing, right click, retarget Anima assets, duplicate, pick our skeleton, change this over to the Fantasy Elf RT Anims directory, and retarget that. Now when we go back up here to our Anima Montage filter, we should see 19 items there and 19 items here. Flip off the Anima Montage, look at animation sequences. There's 124 in there, 124 in the other one. Flip that off and go to your blend spaces. You have 4 and 4. So we have 100% of the animations in these categories that we wanted to be swapped over. Now, they may not all be assigned to the correct places or whatever, but at least they are present. And, you know, if this doesn't look quite right, what you'll be able to do is to change the pitch of the arms and, you know, line things up. You could, even if you wanted to make your life simple, you could take the Epic Mannequin and put it into an A pose, pretty much by following any of my other videos that talks about how to do this. But basically, you take the arms like, you know, back 30, up 50, the lower arms like down 10, and basically you form it into a T-pose. If you did that to both characters and did the retarget, then some of their things will line up a little better. The other thing is, if these don't look quite right, then you just have to go through and check and make sure that you're mapping the bones to the right place and that the other character actually has that bone or whatever. But the long and the short of it is we should have most of this now retargeted onto the character in these RTNM folders. And what I am going to do now, I should be able to go and make a new character for this ACF full player BP. I should be able to take this guy and swap him out right in here. So if I go into my mesh Anim class, I should be able to say Barbarian. Oh, not Anim class, I'm sorry. Let's do one more thing before we do that. I always forget to do this. Since we retargeted this, we want to get the animation blueprint that's in our RT Anims folder. And this is no longer the ACF full Anim BP. We're going to call this the ACF Barbarian Anim BP. That way we know that it goes to this character. So as long as you rename it inside there, you'll be fine. Let's navigate back over to our full player BP. We'll pull this up, and under the skeletal mesh, we'll type in Barbarian or BA or whatever. So here's your male Barbarian 1. Look at him in our viewport, and we'll go in here to the Anim class and get the ACF Barbarian Anim BP. And then what we would want to do in our event graph, there should be an event begin play in here. Right there. So what I would do right here is I would drag these two over just a little bit, and I would inject a hide bone by name in here. So I'm going to say hide, and it should say hide bone by name on the mesh, and it'll repin those for you if you do it that way. And the name of the bone on the other character, if we went in there, that bone is actually called WP. And that's the, I guess, the weapon socket there. So when we go out to our blueprint now, since we've swapped this guy over, we should see that we have our character there. Now he doesn't have the weapons on him because we don't have the sockets. But for all intents and purposes, that retarget did work. He can jump and he can move around, and he's, you know, if I run over here, they're going to think he's an ACF character, and they're going to come over here and try and kill him. You should be receiving damage, and yep. So all that stuff is working. Okay, now let's go over here and talk about the socket changes. The socket changes you would find by, an easy way here is go back to Filters, Animation, and go to Skeleton. And then if you go to the Full Sample folder, you're going to find a couple of skeletons here. None of those are the ones we want though. So we want to go down to the Ascent Combat Framework, and you'll find the UE4 Mannequin Skeleton. And we go back to the skeleton tree. Now this has all the different sockets in here. Now, normally, if your character is compatible or the same as the mannequin, you can just copy all these at one time and dump them at the root level, and it'll go figure out where they belong. The problem with this one's going to be there is probably not a bone named hand_L on the other character, so it would whack these out pretty bad as far as where they land. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave this skeleton open, and I'm going to go back up to the EIN Fantasy Barbarian and get his skeleton. You can see I'm still filtered over there, so it just makes it real easy to find. I'm going to have these two guys next to each other. And then I'm going to go into the UE4 Mannequin Skeleton for ACF. And I'm going to look at each of these things and identify the bone name that they're structured around. So this is hand L, this is hand L, and that is hand L. So I will grab all three of these. I'm going to right click and say Copy Selected Sockets. I'll go over to the male barbarian and I'll look for something on his body that has the hand L. So there's hand R, hand L. If I right click on hand L, I can say Paste Sockets to Selected Bone, and now these are tied to that the same way. These sockets are tied to something that would be his left hand, similar to what's on the mannequin. Now we may have to adjust them as far as their locations and all that kind of stuff, but this is basically how you go through this. So we'll roll down to the next set of sockets. Single hand weapon, that's under hand R, hand R, hand R, hand R, hand R, hand R. So we'll take all of these and we will grab that stack, right click, Copy Selected Sockets, go over here to Male Barbarian and find hand R, right click, Paste Sockets to Selected Bone. Go back here and we'll look at the next set. So the holster is on spine 3, these things are on spine 2, and this is all on spine 1. So we'll take the holster, Copy Selected Sockets, go over here to spine. Now he only has one spine bone here. It looks like spine 1. I don't see any more spines. Actually, there's a spine, the spine 1, and a pelvis. If I type in spine here, it'll filter it down. So he does only have the 2. So if we click on this, it should show us out in this preview window where that is. So I'm on his pelvis there, spine 1. This is going to be way up there for him. Yeah, they're all at spine 1, but they're just moved into different locations. So it's probably not going to matter too much. In all reality, because these things are so close, I could probably actually put them on the same spine. So I think that's what I'm going to do, and then I would just adjust them. So I'm just going to pick spine for all of these. Grab all this stuff here. Right click, Copy Selected Sockets. This will be a little bit different on the one that you're doing, I'm sure. Paste Sockets to Selected Bone. And really what we're doing is we're just looking for spots to have in here to land weapons and items and things like that on. So now we have those sockets on our character. And if we save all that and go back out to the main play window, again, I go through here and say save all, because it seems to me like it doesn't really matter where you save at. There's always some other place you didn't save and you should have. So I typically, I'll go save all here. Sometimes I'll go up here and say file, save all levels. I'll do a save all. I'll do save within the other directory, because you just never know. Especially when you're shutting your project down for the night. You've gotten done doing everything for the day. You're ready to go to bed. Save everywhere. You know, that's my motto. So if we hit play again, let's see. Now, did he did not bring up, well, he's, okay, so let me just see here. It did equip his bow, but he's not able to fire it yet. And some of this is going to be, let's see if I can interact with that. Yep. I summoned my companion. That's cool. And let's see, some of this will be, he can drink the potion, but he's not firing the montage. And he has his sword in his hand. He can swing that. But you can see that the socket's out of rotation. But at least that's working. The equipment socket's in the wrong spot, but at least it's on his body. So we'll just have to translate some things around and move it. And I'll show you how to do that real quick. And then what we'll do is we'll go and we'll fix the rest of the montages. Okay, so if we go in here to our Fantasy Barbarian and locate the skeleton for that character and go back to the skeleton tree, what we can do is we can pull up, there's that bone we hid. We can pull up these different sockets and we can stick things in there and see what they look like. So single hand weapon, if we right click on this, we can go down here and say add preview asset, and let's just type in sword. We should see the SK Blade Dragon Sword. That's the one from ACF. And I'm going to go to character, bones, and I'm going to shut those off now. And I'm just holding down the Alt key and the left mouse button to like pan my character around and rotate him so I can see where he's at. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this socket, I'm going to click on the translate objects, and I'm just going to move this around until it looks more like it would belong in his hand. And give it maybe just a little bit of a pitch this way. Bring it down some. Now, you know, like I said, this character is just such a gross example of how this works. I mean, you're not going to probably mess with something that's this far off. But if you do, I mean, the process is the same, and that's what I'm trying to do. I'm shooting for the high-level stuff to just get you the process. We're not looking for perfection here. We're just looking for general concept. But that gets his sword a little bit closer, and if I go into his, you know, I would do the same thing with all these other things. Now, when you look at the equip things, he has a bow equip and a holster. So bow equip, if we say add preview asset there, and we type in the word bow, what we should find in here is actually, I think that bow in here, if I remember correctly, was called something like Arco. So we pull over the bow, and you can see there's the bow equip socket. And actually, I'm not sure if, let's go back out here for a second, because in the ACF one, I'm not sure if his bow equip socket, where's bow equip? Go in here and say add preview asset Arco. Stick that on there. Yeah, that is okay. So it is this. The bow equip is the socket where it's sitting on his body, as far as just being attached to him. It's not where he's holding it when he's shooting. So do the same thing over here. We would take the bow equip, and we can just move this up. Slide it back, maybe. You know, move it over. I don't know where you want to put it. You can basically do whatever you want to with these. I'm just showing you, again, high level type stuff here. Bow equip. And if you wanted to, you could go over here and spin these around, you know. But now when you go out into the game and he starts with his equipment on there, he should have that bow on his back, say. We move the equipment socket. And if he draws that bow, now you're not seeing the animation. What you're seeing is it just goes right to his hand. See the socket there for his shield is there. Call on my horse there. The attachments are kind of going in the right spot there, but they're just not going to the right equipment spots, which is okay. We're going to relocate the sword and the shield, just to give you again the idea of how it's done. And I think I still have all that open here. Yeah, right there. Oops. So we would go back here, UE4, or I'm sorry, Male Barbarian, and there should be a shield equip. And again, add preview asset and just say shield. And we know that that's in the front of his body, so all we're going to do is we're just going to rotate this. That's not the right thing that I'm rotating there, I don't think. Oh, maybe it is the shield up there. Yeah. Alright, so it was rotating it. So we'll go 180 degrees around. Actually, it's kind of weird that it's not 180. But we'll move it over and see what it looks like on this side. I'm just trying to get these things in the general area. Did I? You know what? I think I resized this thing. Because that looks awfully small. Keep your jokes to yourself. I know what you're thinking. Let's see. Edit, undo, translate socket. Let me spin this character a little bit. Alright, so I guess it's okay. Edit, redo, translate socket. That'll put the bow back over here. Edit, redo. Yeah, it could just be the size of this character. I'm just going to redo the couple things that we did there. And then we can come back over here and grab this shield. Shield equip socket. My goodness. Told you I was getting tired. Shield equip. And I'm sorry, just trying to get these out to you guys. And again, I apologize if these get rambly and, people tend to want things a certain way. And, normally I try and go out of my way to make sure that these are a little bit more, not necessarily scripted, but maybe a little bit more prepared. But for these things, I'm just trying to get them knocked out real quick. Maybe in the future, I'll do something a little bit more cleaned up. But anyway, there's our shield on our back. Of course, we wouldn't leave it that way, penetrating with, or having the bow penetrate through it, but you get the idea of how to move things around. And you can do the same thing with your sword. Usually what I like to do with the sword one, show you, and any of these really, just another quick tip for you. If you go into the spot where you're moving these assets around, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to real click say remove all attached assets and do the same thing. Actually, that should be gone. Why is that in there still? That little shield. It doesn't matter. Let's go to his single hand weapon when it's in his hand, and we'll go to add preview asset again, and we'll put the sword back into his hand. And then what you can do is up here under preview animation, if I forget what it's called, might be called draw, might be called sheath. If you know the animation of what this is that he plays when he pulls out his weapon, it's not attack. Well, we can figure it out in our animation blueprint. So we go over here, and he should have an action in here. Maybe it's called equip, and that would be fairly logical. Sword and shield, sword attack. Those are the movesets. So the common actions up here. Pretty sure it's called equip. Actions equip melee. So if we go to the value, here's the montage. So it's called unarmed equip over shoulder. So if we go back here to our barbarian, we can go unarmed equip over shoulder and use that as our preview animation. And ignore that axe floating around there. But if you step through the animation, you can see where his arm comes right over his back and is grabbing at a sword over here. What I do is I get this to where, he's in that back part of that anim there, and that's where I'm going to move the sword to. So I would take this single hand weapon socket, and I would take this sword and move it out some and get it spun around a little bit and lined up better. Just kind of give you the idea here. But you get it to where, where it looks a little bit more natural. Now it's not even in his hand, but when he goes and puts that away, it's going to go right to that spot. So we would do the same thing now. We would take his sword, where's it at? Sword. single hand sword equip, and say add a preview asset there, and we do the Arco. I don't know what I got a hold of there. Sword equip, add preview asset, find Arco again, and then we're going to take that socket, the sword equip socket. Oh, I put the bow on there. Say remove all attached assets. Sorry, again, tired. Add preview asset, sword, and then we would take the sword equip. This is the one that goes on his back, and we would just basically move this around and rotate it and get it into position, and then we take the one for his single hand weapon, add preview asset, sword on here, preview the animation for unarmed equip over shoulder, and then we would rotate this into position. So let's say his weapon goes like that. Then you would take, wherever this thing lands, you're going to go down here and get this other socket and drag it into position somewhere close to there, so that when you play this out in the game, and you just have to make it to where it looks natural for you. Again, I'm not trying to get this perfect, but say that's where it's at. When you go out and play it in the game now, and he goes to grab his sword, once we play the animations, that should line right up. So let's go back into the animation blueprint. And in the Anim BP, we're going to set up and make sure that all these montages for equipping and everything are correct, and that these are assigned to the right calls here. So let's go through that. Okay, so continuing on to troubleshoot the animation montages, what we'll do is go back into the NMBP, and usually when you have, you look in here and you see that the actions like use item, that the blueprint, or not the blueprint, but the animation has been transferred successfully. Again, ignore this axe flailing around. So if that's working okay, and it's still not playing correctly out in the game, usually what it is because the skeleton has different bone naming conventions. So for this animation blueprint, what you do is you go in here and you're going to find under the anim graph, which is right here, we're going to go in and look at all the different layered blend per bone settings and make sure that we have the right name for the bone. So on this particular one here, if you go up to the layer setup and you look at the members of that, there should be a bone name in here. Yep, so here's spine 02 is the name of where this layered blend is happening. And let's go back out to our skeleton for the fantasy character here and look at his skeleton tree. So remember, he didn't have all those. There's spine 02. He's got this one and spine 1. Let's copy selected bone name, go back over here and paste that in over top of that one, and we'll just do it, checking each one of these layered blend per bone there. See if we have any other ones. That's a boolean layered blend per bone here. Again, replacing these spine names with the spine that's actually on the skeleton. So I did the ones on this side. Let's go through here. That shouldn't have anything in it. Here's another layered blend here. And override that, or paste the name in. It looks to me like that is it. So let's go and compile, save, and go back out to our map here. And so let's equip our sword. Now you can see that because we changed the bone name to the correct name, he's actually playing his animation correctly. Okay, so, and as we showed earlier, his hand reaches basically right up to where that sword is, and it puts it right back to where we had blended it earlier. So now that's working. I would assume that if I drink a potion, yep, he moves his hand there. If I draw the bow and pull that up, see, now he's actually able to draw the bow back and fire his arrows. Okay, so that's the basics of how you would set up a character with different skeletal bones and naming conventions and what's on the default character. Again, this is an extreme example. I don't think you're ever going to have a character that's quite this different as far as the structure goes. But hopefully that helps some of you guys understand a little bit about what's going on in the ACF structure to be able to use a foreign type skeleton like that. And again, we'll do a video on setting up from the ground up on character just to create your own that already has maybe some of its animations but a different skeleton, and you want to create an animation blueprint and assign animation montages and everything for that. And we'll get into that in the next video, not this one. Just, again, these are a little too long, and I don't like to keep them too long. So take care of yourselves, stay safe, and I will see you soon. Thanks again for watching.